Hello aspirants, welcome back to Where I Is. So in Indian polity, we started with fundamental rights. We studied that in classification of fundamental rights, we have 6 fundamental rights. So the first one is right to equality, that is from Article 14 to 18. We had already covered right to equality. So now let's start with right to freedom, that is from Article 19 to 22. These articles are called as the Charter of Personal Liberty or Rights. So hence, these articles are very essential to claim over other rights. Hence, these are called as the backbone or the most fundamental of all fundamental rights. So, let's see what all are given under Article 19. So, Article 19 Clause 1 provides for protection of 6 rights. That is, we have freedom of speech and expression, and we have right to assemble. Not just assemble, we can also form unions, associations and cooperatives. Not just that, we can move freely throughout our country and we can also reside and settle anywhere in our country. Next article, I have kept it blank because we had already studied that this is about right to property and this was removed by the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1978. So this is no more seen. Next we have is freedom of profession, trade and occupation. Let's study about each article now separately. First we have is Article 19(1)(a). It provides for freedom of speech and expression. That is not just the verbal communication but also all forms of communication we have freedom for it. Take for example if you are remaining silent. Remaining silent is also a kind of expression, right? So this is also covered in it. So we have right to remain silent. Voting. Voting is also a kind of behavioral expression. So this is also covered. We must know all the rights that are covered under this freedom of speech and expression. While we are speaking something, if you are defaming a person or if you are making a hate speech leading to an offense or violence, then definitely it is wrong, right? It has to be restricted, right? So we have restrictions while we are having that freedom of speech and expression. So what are those restrictions? The restrictions is obviously it shouldn't lead to a defamation or contempt of court and thus leading to an incitement of offense. That is, while doing all this, we must keep in mind the public order, the decency and morality, and also we must keep in mind the sovereignty of our country and also the security of our state and the relationship we have with our neighboring countries shouldn't be affected with our speech and expression. So these are the restrictions given under Article 1A. And also one more thing we must notice, so this we see the list of restrictions here, right? So it is called as the Article 19(1)(a) as the most restricted right of all the rights. Next we have is Article 1B. It provides for right to assemble. Yes, we can assemble. That is group of people can assemble. But there are two conditions. First is without arms and the second is that assembly has to be a peaceful assembly. So next is obviously even while we assemble we must keep in mind the public order and the sovereignty and integrity of our country. So these are the restrictions while we are forming a group or while we are making an assembly of people. Next we have is right to form associations, unions and cooperatives. Yes, we have right to form our own associations and unions. Here one more thing that is to be noted is the word cooperative was added by the 97th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2011. Yes, we can form associations. So, are the terrorist organizations allowed then? No. Definitely, right? So, there are restrictions while we form associations and unions. The first restriction we have is that is even the associations or unions has to keep in mind the public order, morality and sovereignty and integrity of our country. Next we have is, yes, that is we have freedom to move freely throughout our country. So while we are moving, obviously we must keep in mind the interests of the general public and also the protection of interests of STs has to be kept in mind. STs, they have their own culture, they have their own customs. They have their own religious beliefs. So if a third person, if an outsider is going and occupying their territory, they'll get scared seeing the outsider. So obviously there has to be certain restrictions that has to be placed while we enter the territory of a ST, right? So these are the restrictions to them while we move throughout move freely throughout our country. These are the two restrictions we have to keep in mind. Next is not just we have the right to freedom to move throughout, but also we have freedom to reside and settle anywhere in our country. Obviously there are two restrictions, the same restrictions, that is we must keep in mind the interests of general public and also the interests of STs. Next we have as Article 19(1)(g). It provides for freedom of profession, trade and occupation. Yes, we can practice whichever work we want. We can do any kind of work at any time, and it is up to us, right? We are not forced to do any work. So we don't have any forced labor. No forced labor is allowed. And also we are providing freedom of profession. That is, we can make our decisions as to when to work, what type of work to be done. Everything is up to us. What are the restrictions then? The first restriction is obviously the interests of general public, and also there are certain sectors where monopoly is practiced, in which there is partial exclusion of public from that sector. So these are the restrictions while we have the freedom of profession, trade and occupation. So this completes Article 19. We shall see other articles in our later video lectures. Keep watching Vyara IAS and please subscribe, share Vyara IAS. Thank you.